The African National Congress in Gauteng says they are continuously working on combating corruption in the government. This after presidential spokesperson Diko, Gauteng Health MEC Dr. Banjela Masuku and his wife Loyiso went on leave of absence this week amid a scandal over alleged irregularities relating to 125 million rand personal protective equipment tender. The tender was awarded to Royal Bhaca, a company owned by Diko's husband. Civil society organizations such as the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation, Corruption Watch, Freedom Under Law and Johannesburg Against Injustice say it is troubling that in Gauteng alone, 91 companies who've received purchase orders from the Department of Health are under investigation. For more on the story, we join now live by Zoom by Neeshan Balton. He is the Executive Director at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. Neeshan, a very good morning to you. Haven't spoken in a while. Very topical this week. If you look at social media, the whole of Friday was taken up by this conversation. Are you shocked by the latest revelations of alleged corruption in the rewarding of PPE tenders in Gauteng?
Let me say, I think we had hoped for better. In May already, a collective of civil society organizations wrote to the president immediately after the announcement of the stimulus package. And in that memo, we raised precisely these issues, the need to take steps to prevent what we are now seeing. And fundamentally, we had called for at that time was for full transparency, was for government to use the COVID-19 period to introduce new measures which would hopefully become permanent and would change much of the trends and patterns and systems of corruption. So in one sense, I had hoped for better, but I'm not totally surprised.
At the early stage of the COVID-19 pandemic, civil society organizations made recommendations to the presidency to prevent the very situation we now find ourselves in. What were these recommendations?
What we called for then and what we're still calling for now was for full transparency in terms of the different, or all of the tenders that were going to be issued for COVID-19, not only in terms of who the final service providers were, but also who would have called or issued the call for tenders, who were the businesses who submitted, and finally who got it and at what price. Essentially, what that would have meant was the kind of highest level of transparency which would have acted as a deterrent, because people in a particular field would know who's supplying and at what price, and would have been able to ring the alarm bells much earlier on. We had also called for for National Treasury to be given much more greater powers in terms of monitoring this, as well as for a specific role for the Auditor General to monitor the funds, particularly that which was going to go to local government. We got a wonderful, for the first time, a letter of acknowledgement in which the presidency shared the sentiments of that memo in May already, and indicated that they were going to refer it to different arms of government who were dealing with implementation. It seems as if that is where it stopped, which is why it brings us to where we are today, needing to reiterate, I think, words of advice that were given earlier on in May.
What action do you think President Ramaphosa must take to crack down on COVID-19 corruption for the public to be convinced that government is indeed intent on tackling the problem?
I think he would need to start realizing, firstly, that the level of distrust that has now developed, particularly around the COVID-19 allegations of corruption, is huge, it is extensive. And simply because South Africans had to endure so much as their contribution to get us through this crisis, this is not what they expected. Hence, I think the public outcry. I think fundamental to this is a speedy implementation of oversight measures, not only in Gauteng, but across the country. We've already seen, start to see stories from the Free State, different municipalities across the country, in terms of allegations of corruption, from water tanks to masks to loud hailing to funeral services. So he needs to develop a national infrastructure at a local level to start monitoring what's going on. I think SARS, the Auditor General, National Treasury needs to play a much bigger role. But at the end of it, there needs to be prosecution, and there needs to be speedy prosecution. And where people are found guilty, they need to be seen in orange overalls as of tomorrow, if that were possible, because that is what is required. That is what will be required to restore public confidence in systems of governance and democracy in this country.
And in terms of Gauteng, what recommendations do you think the provincial government or any other provincial government must take to deal with those within the state and other institutions who enable corruption and using this as an opportunity to exploit the situation? There's a lot of calls that have been made for arrests and convictions to happen, which is seemingly not the case at the moment.
Well, as our statement indicates, we commended the provincial government for moving speedily, but I hope that other provinces won't wait until these kinds of allegations surface in their particular provinces. The Gauteng province, however, needs to ensure that the Department of Health, its officials, particularly those dealing with procurement, cooperate fully with the investigation that is going to be underway. And this investigation, we hope, will not drag on, needs to be done speedily. What the province did very correctly was to withhold all payments. And that, I think, is going to be a powerful move to get to the root of this problem. I think once the investigation is done, criminal charges must be brought, prosecutions must follow, and jail time must be served. I think lastly, we're saying that to public servants who are out there, the South African Council of Churches has re-established its unburdening panel, which allows for public servants to confidentially come and share information. And I'm sure that the Council of Churches will provide more information in the days to come. Lastly, it's about building a culture amongst public servants, amongst public representatives, that friends and family that they're associated with need to stay away from doing business with government. And they need to be mindful that perception in cases like this is just as powerful as fact on issues of corruption.
Neeshan, let's thank you for talking to us, but you were touching a bit there on public servants. Let me just ask you a quick one about the recent passing of babu langeni. What are your thoughts about the stories that came out of that process in terms of senior government officials who are also politicians not seen to be complying with the protocols of COVID-19 in relation to conduct during funerals?
I think not only for that funeral, but and this has been from the outset, government and particularly government leaders and public representatives there need to understand that if they want people to follow the guidance and advice that is being issued, they need to lead by example. And when they are seen not to be leading by example, it makes it difficult for everybody else to try and persuade people about the required kind of behavior to deal with this crisis.
Well, Neeshan Balton is the Executive Director at the Ahmed Kathrada Foundation. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.